So recently I was reading over my comments like the good little YouTuber I am when I saw someone asking for a guide for the combat terminal. And I was like, huh, that seems kind of boring. You want my gremlin ass to explain this game's version of a spreadsheet simulator? So anyways, let's talk about knockoff Tetris and how it's the singular most important thing to understand in this game.
Let's get scratching.
Unlocked after completing a run on difficulty 6 of standard mode on any map, the combat terminal is where the game really starts to take off. The combat terminal is a system that every character has, and is the main way to progress outside of a run. Even though each character has a combat terminal, its shape is different for every character. Inside of Combat Terminal, you can place modules, which I'm now realizing is way more important to explain, so my editor will probably do some hard cut. So what exactly is a module? Modules are these Tetris-shaped pieces that can be slotted into the Combat Terminal. They can be acquired upon beating any boss of any difficulty on any map past difficulty 4 standard mode, and any boss on corrective action, and any run of Chains of Disorder. Modules have 4 defining traits: their world type, their rarity, their intensity, and their substats. Let's start with world type, as it's the easiest of the 4 to explain. There are only 4 different world type modules in the game, those being Sky Edge, Fission, Starfort, and Sentinel. Sky Edge and Fission are found after defeating Ring City type bosses. Sky Edge will always give power and health, while Fission will always give skill power and health. Starfort and Sentinel, on the other hand, can be found by beating Wasteland type bosses. Starfort gives more power and shield, while Sentinel will always give you weapon attack power and shield. For the sake of simplicity, I will refer to them respectively as purples, teals, reds, and orange modules. Okay, enough with world types. Let's talk about the real meat and potatoes of a module: its rarity. The rarity of a module affects quite a few things. Module rarity can go from common to legendary, with there being one special case I will talk about later. The rarer the module, the more space it will take up inside of a combat terminal. For example, a common module will only take up 1 slot inside of the combat terminal, while a legendary module will take up a total of 5 slots in the combat terminal. That being said, the rarer the module, the more the base stats will give you per slot it takes up, and the stronger the substats will be. Each combat terminal, as of right now, has a hard cap of 9 slots per world type, meaning that you can really only run 1 5-slot module and 1 4-slot module per world type. This means that until we get more world types or different restrictions on a character's combat terminal, we are stuck running a build that usually consists of 9 slots of either orange or teal modules, depending on what the character wants, and filling the rest of the terminal with reds and purples to taste. The only major rarity that has a unique effect is legendary modules, which have an extra special trait that it can roll. For the sake of time and the fact that this video is already behind production schedule, I'm going to leave doing a deep dive on those extra traits for another video, but if that sounds interesting to you guys, let me know. The rarity of the dropped modules depend on the mode/map you are running, so make sure to check what rarity of relics you can get from the map that you've selected before starting a run. This nicely leads to our next topic. Intensity is a completely separate thing from rarity, but has similar effects on a module. The more intensity a module has, the more stats it will give both in base and substats. There are a grand total of 5 intensity levels, those being no intensity, intensity 1, 2, 3, and finally 4. While intensity is not locked to any map or game mode, it is locked to difficulty, so the more difficult of content you're running, the more intensity the modules that will drop will have. It's really that simple. Now, let's get into something a lot less simple, that being substats. Very similar to the size of a module being affected by rarity, it also affects the amount of substats on a module. Both common and uncommon modules have 1 extra substat on the module, and it goes up by 1 per rarity, ending with 4 extra substats on legendary modules. As stated earlier, the rarity of a module also affects how strong each individual substat can be, which means that not only are you getting more substats at a higher rarity, but also more value for each individual substat. There are a total of 14 substats that a module can roll. Those substats are as follows: skill damage, skill crit rate, skill crit damage multiplier, weapon crit rate, weapon crit damage multiplier, damage reduction, reload speed, magazine capacity, ultimate skill damage, minor skill damage, primary skill damage, weak part damage multiplier, and skill charge rate, which is basically cooldown reduction. Most of the time, a substat will fall in a value range determined by the module's rarity and intensity. Legendary modules, however, could roll something that I will refer to as golden substat slots. These slots will make any substat in that position have a fixed value that is higher than the range it would otherwise have. These slots do not go away on the module if you re-roll that substat. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let's quickly go over the one exception to a lot of the rules that I have priorly laid out, that being Immortal modules. Immortal modules are in many ways similar to legendary modules, but in many ways not similar at all. For starters, just like any legendary module, it will always be 5 slots big and one of the 4 world types. It will always have 4 substats and gain an extra special trait. Now, this is where the similarities start to end. Put simply, there is only one way to get Immortal modules, that being using an advanced locator, which I will go over later, in the Chains of Disorder hard mode and taking down one of the bosses. This is not a guaranteed chance, meaning you might find yourself needing to clear multiple of these hard bosses to get an Immortal module. Immortal modules are always going to be Intensity 4, so it will be the strongest possible module you will get. Another unique thing about Immortal modules is that their extra traits can have unique character-specific traits that can only be rolled on Immortal modules. Again, for the sake of my poor future editing self, I will not go into that much detail on what these are in this video, but if there's enough interest, I will go over them in the Legendary Traits video I mentioned earlier. Okay, that just about wraps up modules. Let's move on to something that is the next unlockable system in the combat terminal: cores. So what are cores? Cores are these tiny chips that you can obtain from running the mode Viral Frenzy. These chips can boost the base stats by an increased amount and can be slotted into modules of Intensity 2 or higher. The base stats that can be increased are Health, Shield, Power, Skill Power, and Weapon Attack Power. Higher modules can and will have more base core slots, but more can be added on later, which again I will go over later in the video. Cores are particularly unique as they can be upgraded to a maximum of 50 levels. Each level, of course, will give the core more base stats per level put into the core. A core can be leveled up using materials gathered by dismantling other cores. Now that we've gone over all the different types of loot that you can put into a character's combat terminal, let's quickly talk about navigating the combat terminal itself. Upon launching the Combat Terminal tab, you are presented with a specific character's combat terminal, in this case its blades. You can very quickly swap between which character's combat terminal you are looking at by pressing this button in the top left hand corner of the screen. Moving down the left hand side of the screen, you can see a window going over both the base and substats given to you from the equipped modules. You can also swap this window over to the trait version of this window to see what your legendary and immortal modules are giving you without having to hover over each individual module. Continuing down the left side of the screen, we are presented with a way to quickly swap between viewing our acquired modules and our cores. Slightly above the modules and cores viewing slider, we are presented with different ways of sorting modules and cores to our liking. This can be done by sorting whichever we are looking at, or even filtering out ones we might not want to look at the current moment. Smack dab in the middle of the screen is the combat terminal itself, shaped to whichever character you are currently building for. Here, we can place modules and even rotate the modules inside the terminal by right-clicking with the module in our hand. Finally, we have 2 last buttons, those being Refactoring and Dismantling. In the Module Dismantling tab, you can select up to 100 modules at a time and get rid of them in exchange for either faded, charged, or overloaded modules. Faded modules are earned by dismantling Intensity 1 modules or weaker. Charged modules are obtained by dismantling Intensity 2 modules, and overcharged modules are obtained from dismantling Strength 3 and higher modules. These can be exchanged in the Exchange Store for a random module of corresponding intensity as the dismantled modules, meaning that in this system, is really only good to get modules out of your combat terminal once you get past strength 3 builds. In the dismantling menu, you can also sort the modules for faster dismantling action. Admittedly, this system is a little bit boring, but that cannot be said about our next tab for modules, refactoring. Oh boy, where do I begin with module refactoring? Module refactoring is where you can take a really good module and adapt it to be one of the best modules you have ever seen, assuming you have the resources. Here you can reshape the module, try to score a higher value in all the substat value ranges, reroll a random subslot entirely, add, or if you are unlucky, lose core slots, give yourself extra substat slots, and even re-roll the trait of a legendary or immortal module. Each of these functions take different resources, which I will cover in the acquisition section later in the video, but you will also need to have enough terminal coins that you earn passively just by playing the game. This is key to creating an endgame build and is the only way to manipulate a module to your liking. Let's quickly cover how you can disassemble and refine cores as well. Okay, for starters, cores have no rarity or intensity, so it doesn't matter which ones you scrap to get the resources. You really only throw the ones you aren't using into the disassembly belt so you can get the resources and level up the ones that you actually are using. The really interesting part of cores comes from a different menu inside the refinement menu. In the top right corner, we can see a tab called Core Mutation. In this tab, you can use a completely new resource to try and increase the base stat per level amount of a core. Now, I have no idea if leveling up the core beforehand increases the chance, but I've literally only filled this so far, so I've only made modules weaker. But the chance that a higher leveled core can have a stronger chance at getting that increase makes this much more interesting. Okay, now that the script is way longer than I thought, let's do a quick rundown of all the different resources I've mentioned, what they do, and how to get them. Starting with module-based resources. We have faded, charged, and overloaded modules, which can be obtained from dismantling modules, and can be exchanged to get random modules of varying intensities. Shaping cores can reshape a module within its size constraint. These can be acquired from standard mode diff 7 and above, and all corrective action floors. Conversion cores can be used to re-roll a random substat on a module. These can be acquired from standard mode diff 7 and above, and all corrective action floors. Refactor data. These can be used to potentially get more subset slots on a module. This action can fail and negatively impact the values of an existing subset if it does. These can be acquired from standard mode diff 7 and above and all corrective action floors. Refactor data can also be used on cores to try and positively impact its given stat. This action can fail and negatively impact the current existing stat. Reset cores can change all of a module's subset values within its predetermined ranges. These can be acquired from standard mode diff 7 and above and all corrective action floors. Empowered cores can be used to reroll a legendary or immortal module's trait. These can be acquired on any Viral Frenzy difficulty. Capacity cores can be used to increase a module's number of core slots. This action can fail, decreasing the amount of core slots on a module instead. These can be acquired through any difficulty on Viral Frenzy. First tune cores can be used to reroll specifically the first substat of a module. These can be acquired from Chains of Disorder on any difficulty or any boss. Final tune cores can be used to reroll specifically the last substat slot on a module. These can be acquired from the Chains of Disorder on any difficulty or any boss. Next, I want to go over the game resources which you will need to spend in order to get into certain game modes or get other resources. First and foremost is Suppression Code. This is the resource needed to get into Viral Frenzy runs. These can be dropped from standard mode runs diff 8 and higher, and corrective action floors diff 11 and higher. Next is the Basic Locator. These are used to get into Chains of Disorder normal difficulty runs. These can be dropped from standard mode runs diff 8 and higher, and corrective action floors diff 11 and higher. Finally, we have Advanced Locators, which are used to enter Chains of Disorder runs on hard difficulty. These can be acquired through standard mode runs diff 10 or higher, and potentially corrective action. I just haven't gotten far enough purely because I really haven't had time to grind this game that much since release. And that's All of them. Oh, thank God. Admittedly, this script was way longer than intended, but I'm hoping that this video does a better job of explaining the combat terminal better than Pew Pew Games did. Though, admittedly, this isn't really a high bar to surpass. If you did find it helpful, please oblige me a moment to do the YouTuber thing and tell you to like and subscribe. It really does help me with motivation to continue making these videos to help get all the info that hopefully isn't in a way that's completely deranged. Anyways, I really do hope you all enjoyed this video, and I will catch you all in the next one.